Good morning. Welcome to the Vapour Cloud webinar on SD-WAN. I'm joined today by Tim Mercer, CEO of Vapour Cloud, and Greg Gyves, Regional Manager for MSP UK and Ireland from Fortinet. They will be discussing many aspects of SD-WAN, including the benefits, who's using it, what security is needed, and how to deploy it with the right partner. If you have any questions for Tim or Greg, submit them in the questions box and I'll come to them at the end. So I'll hand over to you, Tim.
Thanks, Emma. Appreciate it. Let's get into it. Eh?
Yeah. How you doing?
I'm good, mate. You?
Yeah, really good. Yeah. Put on a shirt, had a shave. Feels like the good old days.
I know I feel a bit scruffy now that you've done that.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. I said that without actually looking at what you were wearing.
I've gone back to my military days, I think, khaki, and obviously not unshaven today. But listen, thanks for coming on, mate. Appreciate it. We've got about 40 minutes, 35-40 minutes. So I want to rattle through some questions. Normally, what we see on webinars are no respect to other people, but lots of PowerPoint, lots of presentations, lots of services, and I just want to get a bit deep down and dirty on it with you today, and get into the nuts of it, really, into the nitty gritty of it. So, for those who don't know, Greg, can you give us a quick overview of you and also Fortinet? Because I know Fortinet are a Gartner Magic Quadrant leader in SD-WAN. So, can you give us a little bit of an overview on that, and then we'll get into a few questions, mate, if you can.
Yeah, okay. So I mean, Fortinet is one of the largest security companies in the world. Been going 20 years now, and a leader in the SD-WAN Magic Quadrant, but a leader in numerous other Magic Quadrants as well. So a real broad portfolio across lots of security solutions. I've been at Fortinet. Well, I've been dedicated to Fortinet in some way, shape, or form for 10 years, and I currently lead the MSP business for Fortinet in the UK and Ireland. So that's really enabling our managed service providers, network service providers to deliver, efficient services, managed security services to their customers. Right, that's our primary job. So thanks for having us on.
No, listen, we've known each other a long time, and one of the reasons that we're on here is that very shortly, as you know, we'll be launching our SD-WAN proposition out into the market space. So I thought it'd be wise for us to have a conversation about how we see the market. Let's call it that way. About some of the good things that we hear about SD-WAN and some of the slightly untruths that we hear about SD-WAN. And for that, I'm going to get right into it. I'm going to get right into that straight away. So. The difference between MPLS and SD-WAN, right? First off, and is it one or the other? Because I don't believe it is.
Yeah, no, I don't believe it is one or the other at all. But certainly not what we're seeing in the UK. The difference, MPLS traditionally is wide area network with one central breakout point to the internet, typically, right, with branch office router. That in most cases is not much more than just a router. And to me, what that means is that then beyond that or inside that router, between branch offices, you've got a fairly flat open network, right? And that presents certain challenges, but and it also means that having everything, all the applications backhauling over the network to that central internet breakout point is not necessarily the most efficient way of doing things today, right? Yeah. But again, touching on the branch office router piece, if it's just a router and it assumes a level of trust once you're inside that network, think of some ransomware being able to sort of appearing on a branch office site and then being able to sort of spread across the network because it's open. That's not a good situation to be in, right? Yes. A lot of organizations have built businesses over the last 10-15 years delivering MPLS services. Yeah. Most multi-site organizations have some form of MPLS network, right? I don't see that going away. I think its use cases and its relevance is still there for critical applications and certain use cases in terms of application usage. Yeah. But what we're seeing is the need to have an overlay on top of that in the form of SD-WAN, which gives more agility and the ability to break out locally for certain types of applications, right? So think guest access in a branch office, or think cloud-based applications, SaaS, Salesforce, or whatever it be, Office 365, what that sort of thing, right? You want to allow that for the best user experience to just break out locally. So I think there's some key differences between the two, but moving forward, I definitely see a world where it's a hybrid, right? MPLS with SD-WAN overlay type scenario.
Because we hear it sometimes, and we see it pushed out, and some marketing spiel somewhere around it that we go, move from an MPLS to an SD-WAN and save yourself 50% on your network costs, save yourself 70% on your network costs. And I think what the market's starting to see, our clients at the end, and I did a piece for UC magazine the other day. We've got a duty to educate the customers, not just the partners, but the customers as well, the end users, about what that technology is and what it does. And I think it's important that we get there, because yes, there might be a cost saving on your network basis, but there's a hell of a lot more money that you've got to spend on your security elements around it, isn't there? To make it secure, because MPLS is inherently secure. So we've got to make those networks, if we're going to build SD-WANs, secure, and you've got to spend more money on that element of it rather than the network core. And I think some people fail to understand that bit. They just go for the bright lights that says, oh, we can save 50%. Yeah, but you've got to spend 50% more on your security. You've got to think about what you want to do as a business.
Yeah, and it's not, I think certainly between sort of 2017 and 2019, a lot of the messaging that was coming out, typically from sort of SD-WAN vendors, right? US-based sort of SD-WAN vendors, a lot of it was about cost savings, right? That's particularly relevant in the US. It's less relevant over here in terms of the cost differences between sort of MPLS and internet-based circuits and that sort of thing. And I think that creates part of the confusion, right? Because it's not just about cost savings, right? In some cases, like you've said, to do it right, it's not saving costs at all. It's adding costs.
Yeah.
And I think the key there is understanding what are the other drivers for needing an SD-WAN, right? Digital transformation and greater adoption of cloud services and cloud-based applications is a bigger driver in my mind, or certainly up there with cost savings, right? In terms of why organizations are actually wanting to leverage SD-WAN. Yeah, SD-WAN is an enabler for access to. If you can achieve some cost savings with that, then great, right? But I think the key to the cost savings bit is not having a sledgehammer to crack a nut, right? And I think sometimes if you're introducing an extra dedicated technology into the network stack for SD-WAN, right, that can add complexity, it can add time, and it can add cost, right? All those things go against the cost. So you've got to really sort of keep it simple. And I think we as vendor partners need to simplify it and understand what the customer's trying to at an organizational level, right? And then we can translate that into what the best approach is for them, right? Not necessarily getting fixated on one type of outcome, necessarily be the key driver for the business, but we've got to simplify it rather than overcomplicate things, and that starts with an understanding of cases that we see for not just about cost savings.
Yeah, no, I get that quite strongly, and that's a piece, as I said, we're trying to get across, that we've got to bring that education as much as we can and talk to the clients about actually what they're trying to achieve. We talk about digital transformation there. What's the strategy that they're trying to achieve? We'll come on to homeworking in a minute, because I think it's really relevant moving forward, about how we can help in those scenarios. And one of the reasons for us of bringing this out is, yes, we've got the MPLS core. Yes, we keep speaking to clients about it, but it's an understanding of what the next gen's happening and how can we support our clients in the right way. And I think looking at that homeworking piece, we'll cover in a second. We'll talk about benefits in a second, but let's talk about a couple of case studies. Let's talk about without naming any names, obviously, but let's get a couple of case studies from you that says, a client felt like this, they wanted to do that, it helped them look at that. Have you got some of those that you can help us with?
Yeah, we've got a whole bunch of different reference points that we talk about across different verticals, right? Yeah. So this is common across multi-site organizations, not specific to one type of vertical. A particular one that springs to mind where the customer had an aged legacy network. Memory sort of drivers were for the organization were as part of they had a cloud first strategy, right? Because that linked into their sort of KPIs and strategic objectives as an organization, and as part of that cloud first strategy of across the workforce, several thousand people for Office 365, right? Which again typically break out locally from branches, and the network infrastructure, certainly at a branch, couldn't really cope with that. Wasn't in a position to cope with that demand, the throughput locally at each branch, right? And needed for the best user experience. There needed to be some intelligent decision making about applications and the usage and the performance on the network, right? To choose the best route. But that adoption of Office 365 was a key part of that evolution. And what they needed was a managed service provider to help them with that. The MPLS stayed in, to a certain extent, stayed in place, right? It was an MPLS with a SD-WAN overlay, hybrid type solution. So, but it was more about competitive edge and moving forward to the future, rather than, we need to slash our costs by X, So that was one that springs to mind. That was a transport company, and we're also seeing sort of a lot of transformation in house as well. So we've had 3 or 4 notable projects on managed SD-WAN, mix of MPLS and SD-WAN, and greater adoption of cloud-based services with that as well. So level, we've seen a lot of change and transformation in housing associations as well. But again, a common theme across all of that is that it's not necessarily, we getting fixated on this saving. It's more about how we move forward for the future and be more agile as an organisation in terms of the applications that we use.
Yeah, I think that was sort of that came back when we were looking at how we wanted to. We've got some clients who are fairly agile, lots of like building firms, like roofing firms, contracting firms, that sort of stuff. We want to go to a site for a period of time and then move somewhere else. And putting that fixed network in becomes really, really difficult around it, and it becomes expensive and time consuming as well. And the thought process around for us around that about you're saying about application performance and local breakouts and things like that is the ability is if there is some connectivity there, and it could be public DSL or whatever it might be if it's a small site, that you can put that box on the end, you can put that SD-WAN box on the end and utilize it to run the applications in a slightly smarter fashion. Yeah, it makes them more agile, it makes them smarter, more effective, more efficient, and they can work on that site as an example for 3 or 4 months and then move it to the next one and then move on. And I think it stops us having to then, in theory, sort of not reinvent the wheel, that's probably the wrong words I'm looking for, but to say to someone, right, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to build a whole new MPLS network for you, we're going to have to put whole new infrastructure in, we're going to have to do all this sort of stuff. And actually what we can do is utilize, even if they're going to go buy another company, they go buy a company, it's on a different network, all right, but you want to bring it into your core infrastructure, great, well actually let's put that overlay, like you say, that SD-WAN overlay on top of your MPLS that you've got today and bring that network into us in the right format.
Yeah. Well, and actually touch on the side there with the pop-up networks and the porta cabins and temporary sort of construction sites and all that sort of thing. And the thing that springs to mind there is cellular connectivity, right? That's common across a lot of the smaller sort of sites that are out in the sticks, and it doesn't pay to have fixed lines to that site. It's easier to fail over to 4G SIM, for example, right? What we've seen in there is, well, how do you sort of maintain the the policy around sort of applications, and also maintain the security posture if for whatever reason you need to fail over to 4G SIM, because typically it's two different types of product, right? It's one that's a router, and then it fails over to the 4G side of things. Again, we certainly with our solutions and what our managed service providers are embracing is the ability to integrate a 4G SIM into that edge device and have a consistent sort of policy across applications, regardless of whether it's DSL, it's 4G or whatever it may be, right? Gives the consistency, and in the event that you do need to fail over to cellular, then you can get quite granular over the applications that you prioritize, right? And what you don't want to be doing is having somebody hogging YouTube on the days when you've had to fail over to 4G, because it's going to, it might be YouTube for educational purposes or something like that, doesn't it? But it's you might want to restrict that and say, right, well, do you know what? In the days that the time that we fail over to 4G, I just want to prioritize critical business applications, right? That's going to help me keep that, and then you restrict or cut back on usage of other types of otherwise valid but again just keeps that certainly the costs in terms of how you keep the business running.
Yeah, and I think that's what you said earlier, and that's where I see when we've looked at it in a lot more detail around it and spent some time on it, and looked at other providers as well, not just yourselves. We've gone out to the market and searched it. What we like about it is it improves that performance, it improves that efficiency, and it does that automatic load balance. And if you build it correctly and you understand what you want to do with it, that allows those networks to run far more efficiently than they previously, depending on what you build, obviously, but than they could previously do with having, a standardized set of policies that run from the network, that run out to the box, and it's fairly easy to deploy and manage and support. And therefore, that's where that cost effectiveness comes, I believe, in that element around it. You've got to put that security policies in the core to be able to run. And I think that's where some people fail over. They go, oh, yeah, it's great, we can put a box on it, can do this, that, and the other. But it has to have that security policy that sits in the network. I was speaking to someone about it yesterday, one of my guys. I said it's a bit like having a mothership and then having a smaller ship saying, I'm here, I'm logged on, I'm ready for you. And the mothership says, right, here you go, here's all your security policies, here's everything, and pushes it down to it. I think that's the sort of the easy use I could explain it to one of the guys here.
Yeah, well, and it's, I'm glad you touched on the security, obviously working for a security company, but you touch on the ease of deployment, right? So if you're rolling out to new sites and you want to do everything centrally, and maybe rolling out to sites that have got unskilled, from an IT perspective, people at those sites, you need that sort of zero-touch provisioning, right? So send the box out to site, as long as it's got a connection, it's going to phone home and I can push everything. That's a key sort of element of this whole initiative, because it's got to be made, it's got to be easy or easier to and deliver. And particularly when you're bringing on new sites, maybe the business has made an acquisition, inherited a bunch of sites overnight, the need to sort of bring those new sites into in line with group standards, whatever those standards are, you have to do truck rolls, so to speak, out to all those different sites, particularly in the environment that we're in now. So that ease of deployment is key. But the main thing, or certainly what we see as one of the biggest inhibitors to adoption is, right, so think about it this way: you've got had a traditional MPLS network, and you've got predominantly one net, right? And if you've got, say, 50 sites, and you're embracing SD-WAN, and you want local breakout at each of those sites, now you've got 50 breakout points to the internet, or you've got
Yeah.
50 routes into the organization.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think certainly from our perspective, we look at it in from security, then SD-WAN, security first, and embedded into that security functionality, right? In that order. And we're big believers that it's much better to deliver a secure network than to deliver a network with security on it, right?
Yeah, good point. I like that. Yeah, I like that.
You know, and that summarizes what we're all about, right? That's why SD-WAN is a feature on our market-leading next-gen firewall device. You know, so you can put one of those edge devices out at the branch office. You know, consistent sort of interface across a multitude of different variations of that device in terms of size and shape. And SD-WAN comes as a feature on that. So it's naturally integrated into a secure platform. You know, it all goes into that ease of integration and ease of delivery. You're not having to cobble together different solutions to try and deliver a set of outcomes.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons we looked at you inherently at the beginning, and as I said, that looked at others is because we've already got Fortinet firewalls in, and some of our clients have got their own hardware in our network that runs it, and actually to run that through, they've got SD-WAN ports on there that we can just bring that network, our network, their network into that SD-WAN box, even if it's on MPLS, and run it through, and the transition's nice and smooth. We're not having to reinvent the wheel. The client feels really comfortable around it. The policies are on there. It's ready to go. And as you said before, you're not having to rip and replace. You can just add services to it, and it works.
Yeah.
We've got about sort of 10 minutes left before if there's some questions. So, and I'm always conscious that the webinars are sort of 40 minutes, and it's a nice bite-sized chunk that. So with that in mind, that there's zero touch provisioning and it's easy to roll out and that sort of stuff, let's talk about home workers. Let's talk about how we know the world's changed a little bit into what I'm not going to get into what's going on in the world, but the working policy's changed. You're at home. Yeah. Lots of people are at home now, but lots of people are connecting their corporate infrastructure, laptops, phones, etc., to their potentially, I'm not saying they all are, but potentially insecure broadband network that they're trying to work from. And I would, the companies that we're dealing with and talking to, it's probably top one or two of security policies when working from home. How do we fix it? So how do we? Give us. I've got my own views around this. That we've got a home working policy that we can put an SD-WAN box in theory or a product set in there that can run across that home broadband router and run across that home broadband service, but deliver a much more secure and encrypted endpoint for the customers, for the clients to be able to use, and it makes them nice and secure at home.
Yeah. So really sort of valid point, right? And I think certainly, this year's been all about sort of keeping the lights on it, right? Making sure people continue to work, and people have not really had the time to really think about or security front of mind. As we found a new baseline, I think people will review that distributed workforce and that sort of attack surface and look to improve the security posture across the new workforce, or the more distributed workforce, right? I think the key making that remote worker piece fly is having a sliding scale approach to in the organization. And what I mean by that is you might have a power user numerous different types, but a power user where actually you want actually we've seen in certain cases the need to sort of put in a dedicated line with a dedicated security SD-WAN device, that line, and keeping it separate from that staff members' traditional sort of home network broadband line, right? Balance between wanting to sort of, you need to have to try and sort of keep the lines divided, if you like, between sort of working world and challenges on the network and access versus stuff that's going on in the home. But you also need to then look at what the sliding scale of is in terms of the approach for task workers, who maybe it's not feasible or put in a dedicated line and a dedicated box. You still want to ensure that the endpoint device that they're using has got some form of security on it that can actually, where you can have some form of offline, policy enforcement and online policy enforcement that's consistent with the group standards. That's easy to deploy and put on that task worker's home device. To make sure that
what we don't want
basics are in place.
What we don't want there is you're working from home and the kids are at school and then they all come home, as an example, and you're trying to graft and they're on their Xboxes and they nick all the bandwidth, as an example, and you struggle to do what you need to do, work. If we're all got to work from home, we've got to try and make it an easier environment to be able to do that. And putting something in place like an SD-WAN overlay inside that network would allow us to be able to prioritize that traffic at certain times and allow us to be able to use the network in its most efficient way. Let's put it that way.
And that comes down to having, if you did want to put it in the home, you need to have a really small form factor device that's still got high throughput, that's still got all of the consistent feature set in terms of security and application routing, but it's not going to break the bank in terms of a 3 or 5 year cost to deliver it, right? And if you can get that, and certainly the custom managed service providers embracing our portfolio because of that reason, because the smallest desktop-based edge device that could sit in a home, I've got one secure in my home network, one of the small FortiGates. That's the same interface and operating system as one of the core devices that are in, that are in the center of the network. So from a management perspective, an admin's perspective, whether it's from the customer's view or whether it's from the service provider's view, it's no different. It's just another device, and that's really important.
And that's how I see. I think and I know there's some other firms doing it, and it's one thing that we want to get to. You guys have got a nice access point that we can plug in. We can link that into the customer's router, broadband router at home. Your home tablets, the kids' tablets, whatever, connect to the normal broadband router. But our services, our laptops, our phones connect to the access point to make it nice and secure. And then that links into the network and into the broadband, into the network, and out it goes. And I think there's a lot more relevance around that moving forward for our clients about looking and making sure that their people who are working from home are secure enough to be working from home, and they're not, as you said earlier, they're not going to get any phishing emails or anything like that they're going to bring back into the core potentially to make them nice and secure. And I think that's a really interesting point moving forward.
Yeah, and productivity as well. I think generally a lot of organisations have been pleasantly surprised with product organisations where you have to be in the office to be seen to be, you can only be doing work if you're in the office, right? But I think there's a lot of organisations that have been pleasantly surprised with the productivity. That said, moving forward, once the novelty starts to wear off and actually we have a much more balanced approach to, I think sort of next year we'll have a much more balanced approach to sort of home and work, right? Not everybody wants to work from home 100%. Not everybody wants to shoot back to the office 100%, right? So there's going to be a more balanced approach. And I think by the time we hit a couple of years, we'll be much more in a place of work is a thing that you do ago, right? Much more widely accepted, and with flexible working's been coming into organisations for years, so it's not changed anything. It's just accelerated. It's just accelerated things, right?
Yeah, we've worked like that for a long time, don't get me wrong, and our industry's worked like that, but lots of others haven't, have they? You know, and it's a challenge for them. And I think, you know, we've got, as I said earlier, that's that education piece for us, that we understand what might happen for the clients, and we can help them, take them on that journey around making sure that if they do want to go down that route and they do want to make them secure at home, we've got some products and some services that allow them to do that. If they don't, that's their call. But if they do want to do that, we have to have something that's cost effective and efficient and reliable, that allows them to, as you said, zero touch. We don't want to, you know, we don't want an engineer having to go out and install it. They just want to plug it, play it, and rock and roll with it, really. Okay.
Well, just one final point on that, which kind of links us back to one of our original points around the confusion between MPLS and SD-WAN, right? I think what customers need and what they're looking for is providers who can help them understand today's requirements, but also make provisions today and decisions today that make it easier to embrace things coming down the line. And a clear example of that is customers yet have a clear use case or a challenge that is solved by SD-WAN, right? Maybe they're coming to refresh and renewal of their MPLS network, and actually they know that SD-WAN is an emerging network alternative or thing that can be embraced, but they're not quite sure of what it means to them today, right? Certainly what we're seeing providers doing from who built their SD-WAN proposition on Fortinet, delivering an SD-WAN ready MPLS network, right? And that's by delivering the MPLS, but having the FortiGate and the edge device as the CPE, replacing the, not necessarily unlocking all of the functionality with the SD-WAN.
Yeah.
But it's there when you need it, right? And
I think that's a good point.
That takes the pressure off the customer needing to make a decision or feeling like they need to make a decision one way or the other, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a point we made earlier, wasn't it? Is it that or that? Well, actually, it isn't. It can be both, and we can build something that allows you to grow into it, as long as we understand what you want to do. I think that's a really good point.
And it's just about future proofing, right? Continue doing what you're doing today, but we're going to future proof you for decisions that you may want to make further down the line, you know?
I think it's a great point to finish on for us. Emma, hopefully there's some questions around it that we can, hopefully we can answer them. Let's put it that way. I'm going to divert to Greg on these ones. We've got some questions.
We have got some questions. So firstly, is SD-WAN a replacement for MPLS, or does it run alongside it?
So I think Greg's answered that just then, really, hasn't he? You know, I think they work. Greg, you can fill us in a bit more, but I think they work in tandem with each other, in harmony, if we want them to do that.
Yeah, I think that sounds like that question may have come
at the beginning. Yeah,
maybe. Yeah. Hopefully, with whoever asked it, hopefully
we've answered it. Hopefully.
Yeah.
So next, you mentioned the change to a hybrid solution in your user case. It gave them a competitive edge, and how was that? How did it give them a competitive edge?
How did it give the customer a competitive edge? Well, so the cloud first strategy links into giving them a competitive edge because it's the ability to leverage new applications quicker, right? Embracing change quicker, and that what that feeds down into is the ability for the to make decisions and embrace change quicker, essentially. So, you know, I think really what I suppose the competitive edge is much more high. That's kind of more linked into what the cloud first strategy was about. You know, and we see that quite a lot in terms of, you know, businesses that have adopted it. It's about, you know, that competitive edge in whatever their respective market is, the ability to serve their own customers quicker and respond to change quicker. And I think having a network underneath all of that that helps facilitate that response to change quicker, it all just plays its part, really. So hopefully that kind of answers the question. I'm happy to sort of have any follow-on calls if in the short space of time that we've not quite given people the clarity in terms of the answers, more than happy to jump on subsequent follow-on calls.
I agree with that. If anyone wants to take it offline and come through to us, and we want to have a call with us and pick that up and run with it, and they've got an opportunity that they want to discuss with us, we're more than happy to take it offline, and Greg and I will speak to anyone who needs it. Any more, Em?
Yeah, I was going to say I send a follow-up email tomorrow with a copy of the recording of the webinar, but it's got my email address on. So if anyone does want to take it offline and follow up with either Greg or Tim, send me an email and I'll set that up for you. So can you clarify, the home worker edge device is sat behind the end user's home broadband. How would it be able to prioritize the network first over like Xbox Live, for example?
Over what, sorry, Emma?
How would it be able to prioritize the network first over something like Xbox Live? So I think the example that you use with, I think Tim used, the kids come home from school, you're still trying to work, the kids are on the Xbox. How does it prioritize what you're doing over something else?
So it's a function on the device called application control, essentially. Okay. So there's thousands of signatures that you can apply a policy for. So and actually, I need to do it on my home device. I've not done it yet, but yeah, you would. So Xbox, or you could make a policy based on the device. So if it's the Xbox, if you wanted to sort of reduce priorities and the ability to throttle bandwidth associated with a particular device, you can do. So you could say, right, hours of these hours of the day, between 9 and 5, reduce the bandwidth allocation to that particular Xbox that's seen as on the network, and it's got you can apply a policy for it. You can also then add policy from an application level, right? So again, you can get quite granular to say if that Xbox is playing on a particular game and accessing a certain external service as part of playing that game, then that's not maybe too resource intensive, but an Xbox can YouTube, right? So let's say the Xbox device is trying to access YouTube, then you can throttle that down. So you can get really granular over the access that you allow, and that's the beauty of it, right? Everybody's different. Everybody's got different use cases. I think the customer wants to achieve, and what's important to the customer, and what can be a challenge for the customer in terms of application usage. We enable to different policies to get really granular control over who's doing what when.
Excellent, thank you.
I'll caveat that I'm not a techie and Greg's not a techie, so we'll definitely need a techie to help us. All right. So when we get into the detail of it, we need some technical people to help us out. Definitely around it. But that's the top, around how it works.
Yeah. I've scraped my knowledge there, by the way. So we definitely need a techie if we're going to follow the conversation.
Luckily, we know a few of them. We're all right.
Yeah, we do. Any others, Em?
No, that's it for the questions. You guys covered a lot. And as I said, if anyone has any more questions, follow up with me afterwards. You've got my email address from the invites I sent, and I'll set up a one-to-one with Tim and Greg for you.
And this will be on our YouTube channel within 24 hours or something like that.
I'll upload this tomorrow onto our YouTube channel so you can watch again and share it. And I'll also send a recording out tomorrow with a follow-up email. As you know, we host these webinars regularly on lots of different topics. So look out for more invites from us. And you can follow us on LinkedIn or Twitter to see more invites and more topics that we'll be discussing. Thank you again, Tim and Greg.
Thanks, Emma. Greg, thanks, pal. Appreciate it, mate.
Thanks, everyone.